What is tithing? Why should we tithe? What does God say about tithing? This is tithing in 40 minutes, all right? So we are going to begin a two-part series called Price Tag. And over the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about money. And in case you're wondering, right, actually, all of us in this room, we all come in with different experiences about money. Maybe some in this room, the truth about you is that you come from a family that is well-to-do. Maybe you come from a family that has a lot of things, and money is not a concern and a worry in your life. That could be the case for some of us in this room. Most of us in this room come from a situation where perhaps we're middle income. It's not like we're really struggling to make ends meet, but nor is it that we keep splurging on luxurious things. And there might be some in this room, some of us who may be maybe experiencing financial difficulty. Maybe you grew up in a situation where loan sharks are common for debtors to come to your place and seize things. It is common to run out of money to pay water and electricity bills, and that to a point where sometimes the water and electricity gets cut, and that's not a nice feeling at all. And I believe that in this room, we have all sorts of varying experiences with money. Then also, we also have a different opinion and experience of how church handles money, or maybe other people handle money. We have different experiences about giving, and then sometimes people will tell us things like, oh, church always want your money, and we hear this from people, maybe we experience it for ourselves. When I first came to church, right, one of the things I was very concerned and very careful about is when church seemed to want to ask for money. I was very worried because I hear this before, I read some of us in newspaper, I hear from other people, and so every time that the church tries to talk about money, I'll be all ears, and I'll be very careful, and I'll scrutinize everything that they say, and I had a strong opinion that actually church doesn't need my money. I had a strong opinion that between giving to the poor, giving to the homeless, giving to the auntie who is selling tissue paper in the very hot hawker center or on Orchard Road where there's no shelter, and giving to her and giving to the church. Look at the church, it's so rich, has so many things, then take our money and then go and, like the pastors have big houses and drive fast cars and all that. So I had an opinion that church is like wanting to swindle your money. So when I first came to church, I had that kind of attitude. And then obviously I will agree, or I will look for people that agree with me. And then when people try to teach me about what God says about money, when people try to teach me about the value of tithing and all that, I'll think to myself, yeah, you are brainwashed. You are brainwashed Christians, then you all only tell me this kind of thing. So I'll kind of filter for myself who I want to listen to and who I don't want to listen to. You see, we have a view of money based on our experiences, based on what we hear from people, based on what we interpret. And oftentimes with that view of money, we take that view and we project it onto God and onto the church. If we are greedy, generally, when it comes to money, we are greedy. We take our greediness and we project it on God, and we project it on the church, and we think that church is greedy. Church always wants my money. If we are calculative and stingy, and that's the way we treat money, every cent counts and everything matters, and we're very tight on things. We project it on God and we project it on church, and we think that, church is very calculative, God is very calculative, God always wants something for me, man. And everything I do is not enough for Him. Or maybe we're careless with money and we just anyhow, and we project that on God and on the church, and then we think that church anyhow spend money, and they don't have proper accounts and everything. A lot of times we take our view of money, we have an existing view, and we project that on God and the church. And so today, we're kicking off a two-part series called Price Tag. And over the next 2 weeks, we're going to learn from the book of Matthew, specifically Matthew chapter 6. There are two passages back to back that Jesus is talking about money. Okay, so today I'm going to do part 1 from verses 19 to 24. Next week, Wei Hong is going to do part 2 from verses 25 to 34. These two passages that fall back to back in the book of Matthew chapter 6, right, is actually part of a greater collection of Jesus' teachings. It is a famous set of teachings that you might know of called the Sermon on the Mount. And this set of teachings span 3 chapters, from chapter 5 all the way until chapter 7. And basically, the whole idea about this set of teachings, right, the whole idea behind it is talking about life in the kingdom. You can write this down. where the entire set of teachings from chapter 5 all the way to chapter 7, Jesus is teaching about life in the kingdom. And how life in the kingdom of God is different and looks different and must be perceived differently from life on earth. Different values, kingdom values rather than earthly values, kingdom principles rather than earthly principles, kingdom priorities rather than earthly priorities. And in here in chapter 6, Jesus is talking about a topic that is very close to many of the hearts of the people back then and also very close to our hearts, the topic of money. I pray that over the next 2 weeks, as we learn from the teachings and the words of Jesus, that as we learn about how God views money, that rather than we take our view of God and project it on God, we hear about what God says about money, how God views money, and we allow God's view, God's priority, God's values to be projected onto us. Meaning to say that we become transformed. As we hear about how God views money, we become transformed and we take on the perspective of God when it comes to viewing money, rather than we take our view of money and we project it on God. I think there will be a better way to approach how we view money. So as we listen to the words of Jesus and what He says, may God's word transform our hearts and transform our actions. The title of today's message is, What Do You Value? Taken from Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 24. And as you copy down the title of today's message, it's a wonderful habit to take notes. The title of today's message is, What Do You Value? From Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 24. There are 6 verses, and I'm going to read it out for you, and I would like to have you follow me along on the screens as I read to you God's word from this passage. Jesus says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Wow, it's really in your face. And I think the first thing that we can learn from today, 3 points today, the first point that we can learn from today is, number 1, value spiritual treasures over earthly treasures. We can learn that from verses 19 to 21. If you're taking notes today, point number 1, rather long point. Point number 1, value heavenly treasures, eternal treasures, spiritual treasures over earthly treasures. From verses 19 to 21. You can copy that down, and let me read out these verses again for you. Let me just read out verses 19 and 20 first. It says, do not store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin, or some translations say moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin, or moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. You see, why are we afraid of moths and vermin and rust? Why would they be afraid? Because you see, at that time, some 2,000 years ago, the banking system that we have today isn't very established. The banking system, number 1, was not very established, and the banking system that existed was not very trustworthy. There was a lot of corruption, and basically people didn't feel safe converting their assets into currency and then put it in a bank. So what they would do instead is they would keep their assets, they would keep their wealth in the form of goods and commodities. So a lot of these goods and commodities would be things like precious metal, expensive fabric, things basically that they will keep for themselves. So when you keep these things, when you store up for yourself precious metal as part of your wealth, because of the climate in that Middle Eastern, Palestinian area, it is easy for these precious metals to rust. And also, if you keep for yourself expensive fabric and that becomes your asset, basically this thing, right, is open to being eaten up by moths and vermin and is basically perishable. So this very expensive thing, if you ever had an expensive shirt or expensive white dress that you're keeping for a special occasion, maybe a first date or somebody's wedding, maybe your brother's wedding or something, you're keeping an expensive white shirt or expensive white dress for that occasion, and then finally when that occasion comes and you take out the white shirt, you're about to wear it and you realize that shirt suddenly has some yellow and brown spots and patches on it, right? Because you kept it in your wardrobe, and then no matter how you try to wash, it's still there. So it's something like that. Basically, we're talking about the deterioration and the depreciation of some of these treasures that are hidden and kept and stored up by the people. So thieves will come in, the moth, the rust, the vermin, they would destroy their possession. So at our age, or maybe at your age, many of you are students or NSF, right? At your age, you may not have a lot of things that are extremely high in value, right? You may not have $100,000 things, $1 million things, but perhaps you and I, we have things that are extremely high, not in monetary value, but in sentimental value. You and I, maybe we have stuff that very, very important to us. Maybe it's a gift given by somebody, a piece of jewelry or something that's very significant, not because it's expensive, but because the person gave it to us in a special occasion and it represents a special relationship. We keep that. It's our treasure. Could be a card that someone wrote to you. It's not so much the value of the card itself, but it's the words inside and what it represents, a relationship with a special person. It could be certain photos, either hard copy photos of certain loved ones, family, dear friends that you keep. These are your treasures. It could even be soft copy inside your phone. And so these are things that matter to us. They are important things that we keep. And even then, nowadays, when we keep things, and even though the conditions enable us to be able to keep things better, yet we know that some of these things, they depreciate in value over time as well. The photos get more dog-eared and yellow. The card that we keep starts to have brown patches, even if we try to keep it properly. These things also wear out. Some pieces of jewelry that we keep, that people give us, also start to have a rust or start to wear out over time. And it could even be soft copy. I shared this example during Unicamp where one day when in my iPhone, the settings app has this batch notification, right? And I click on it, what is it? iOS update, right? So I just innocently just click on it, just update this. And then as I click on it, it seems like it went on and on and on forever. You know, the bar goes all the way to the end. Then after that, the phone restart. And then it started that process again. And it restarted again. And it started again. And basically, the iOS process was basically, it messed up. So I thought to myself, okay, thankfully, I have a backup. The backup is not very recent, it's about 2 to 3 months ago, but thankfully, I managed to back up. Because in this phone, there are a lot of very, very precious treasures that I hold to my heart. My wedding photos, my honeymoon photos, and the photos and videos of when Isaac was first born. So these are very, very important to me. So thankfully, I had a backup. So I brought my phone to an Apple store. They couldn't save it, so they had to reset it, but it's okay, I had a backup. So after they reset it, I brought it home, and then I opened my iTunes, and then basically I needed to click on this thing called, next slide please, I needed to click on this thing called Restore Backup, right? It's simple as that. But I don't know why, for some reason on that day, I wasn't really thinking straight. And then just next to it, right, because it wasn't highlighted like this, I just decided to click on the other one that said, both say backup, you know what I mean? It's confusing. So I decided to click on back up now. And basically what it did was that it backed up the new empty phone and it override the previous phone. And iTunes has this function where it overrides the previous ones because they don't want you to accumulate, like multiple backups of space. So basically it backed up the empty phone and it overrided. And when I realized what was happening there before my eyes, I was like, stop. I tried to click it and like, stop, no, this cannot be happening, And I went berserk. I was like, no, we gotta save it, no. And I stopped it and I tried to restart it and I couldn't retrieve the previous backup. It was being overridden already. So I called in to the US, to Apple support to help me. And I tried to chat with them. And I said, you got to help me, please. It's very, very important to me. It's very, very precious to me. And to no avail. Everything I tried to Google, like how much can I pay for this? Because it's not just monetary value. It's things that are very precious to me that money cannot buy. And I tried to pay for it. I tried to Google and search how to restore this. And basically, I found dead ends everywhere. I could not retrieve it. All of it was gone. And this really struck me, right? And some of you, as I'm telling this story, you're like, wow, you can feel it, man. If one day, right, this thing happens to you, right? And it's just basically erasing what is precious to you. And so, right, Jesus is saying here that just as treasures on earth, right, you cannot completely prevent things from happening to them. And just as treasures from earth, you cannot just store for yourself, right? As if you can just accumulate wealth, because moth will come, vermin will come, rust will come, thieves will break in and steal. And even if you are able to preserve everything perfectly, Jesus is also saying that once you die, you can take none of this with you. All these things on earth will remain here on earth. That when you die, when you pass on from this life, none of these things that you accumulate, you can take with you. And Jesus was contrasting all these treasures on earth, right, with another type of treasure that moth and vermin and iOS updates cannot destroy. Treasures in heaven. And he was saying that there are treasures in heaven that moth and rust cannot destroy. What are treasures in heaven? A couple of weeks ago, Jing Jie was preaching about this prize, this crown that Paul was straining towards. It is that treasure that God has prepared for us at the end of our life, our salvation, our relationship with God. That moment when this life is done, when we live our life fully for God, and when we reach the end of our Christian race here on earth, we meet with our Lord and Savior, and He says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And that is that moment, that is the thing that we are encouraged to strain towards. It's important for us to know today, my friends, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that money is evil. I'm not saying that we should reject money. I'm not saying that if you have money in your wallet or money in your account, you should just throw it away or give it away. That's not what God is saying. That's not what I'm saying. We should not be ashamed if we have money. We should not even be ashamed if we are very wealthy. Now listen, some of us, right, when we come to church and because we want to appear like humble and we don't want people to think that we're very rich and all that, right? Sometimes we're ashamed that we come from a family that's more well-to-do. Maybe today your dad wants to send you to church, but you know your dad drives a big BMW. And it's like, it's okay lah, pa, I'll take MRT or I'll take the bus, because you don't want to be seen stepping out of a BMW and coming to church, and then somebody sees you and then like, oh, wow, you very rich, you very rich. Or maybe your dad insists on sending you and say, okay, but can you drop me somewhere far away, then I walk myself. Just don't want to be seen because we're ashamed of money. We're ashamed of wealth. God is not saying that we should reject money. God is not saying that we should be afraid of wealth. Some of you are saying, thank God. But what is God saying here? Actually, God talks a lot about money. Actually, in the Bible, Jesus talks a lot about money. But yet, every time He talks about money, He's really not talking about money. Every time that Jesus talks about money, the issue that He really talks about is our heart. Because God's issue is never about the money in and of itself. God's issue is always about our heart. God's issue with us, it's not about the money, but it's about what the money represents. Our priorities, what we place our trust in, our desires. And fundamentally, it says here in verse 21, it's very obvious. It says, where your treasure, where your money, where you invest in, where your heart is in, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. How do I know what a person values? How do I know what the person prioritizes? I look at the way he spends his money. That's one sure way that you can know how the person lives his life and what he values in his life. You look at how he spends his money. In a very simple example, and I like to do this. When I'm paying at the checkout counter at NTUC, one of the things I like to do, because I'm a big kaypoh, right, is that as I'm waiting, I look around me and see what people are buying. And when I see what is in their basket, I try to guess what kind of lifestyle they live. If, let's say, the person has potato chips, canned drinks, instant noodles, ice cream, it's probably one of you, right? If, let's say, in the person's basket, there's fresh vegetables, raw meat, condiments, fresh fruits, probably this person is preparing a meal for their family. If let's say in this person's basket there is diapers, milk powder, baby food, probably this person has a newborn. From the person's expenses, you can tell their lifestyle. And this is what Jesus is saying here, kind of. He's saying that when you think about what you spend, when you reflect on what you spend, it reflects on what you value. What we spend on reflects on what's important to us. What we choose, where we choose to place our expenditure reflects on where we place our priorities. So this is what he's saying. Think about this. My friends, think about this. Think about the last 1 week, the last 5 days, Monday to Friday and today, Saturday. Just think about that, the last 1 week. All the money you have spent, every dollar and every cent that you have spent in the last 1 week. Think about that. How much of that was spent on yourself? How much of that was spent on building God's church? How much of that was spent on other people, blessing other people? Just think about that. God says that you can come to church and say, praise you, Lord, I give everything to you, I love you, I give my whole life to you, I surrender. But by looking at how you spend your money, I know where your heart is. And that's very stunning to many of us, because the truth is, it's not about the dollars and cents for God. It's about our priorities. It's about our values. That we can sing about it, we can shout about it, we can even teach it. But if our expenditure, if our financial statement, our personal financial statement doesn't reflect these values, then the truth is our hearts belong somewhere else. Maybe we spend a lot on luxuries. Maybe we spend a lot on things that make us happy. Maybe we spend a lot on bubble tea. Maybe we spend a lot on saving up for that holiday that we can take at the end when our studies is done. Maybe we spend a lot of money on our Netflix and our Spotify subscriptions. Maybe we spend a lot. And listen, I'm not saying that these are wrong things. These are perfectly fine. Most of it, at least. Bubble tea will kill you at a certain point. But most of it is okay, in moderation. But God is not against these things. God is saying that if you only spend on yourself and you don't invest in building God's church, you don't invest in other people, you don't invest in treasures in heaven, it should tell you something about yourself. It should reveal to you the state of your heart. That's what God is saying. And as Christ followers, you must know that it matters to God the way we view our money. And the way we view money must be different from the world. We cannot, as Christ followers, after having a new identity, a new relationship with God, being changed by God, continue to view money the same way as if we don't know Christ. It cannot. It has to change our perspectives. It has to change our priorities. We have to change. It has to affect our lifestyle. It cannot just be the same. And the truth about us is that maybe we know it conceptually, but when it comes down to our balance sheet and our financial statement, it doesn't really impact there. And maybe some of us, maybe when we think about registering for student conference, wow, for some people, $50 is nothing. But for me, $50 is a lot of money because I don't come from a very well-to-do family. I have to earn my own money, work part-time to pay my own school fees, plus my own expenses. $50 means that a lot of things I cannot do, and I have to sacrifice a lot of my own needs. I have to give up a lot of things. And maybe to you, you decide that, okay, because of money, never mind. You can give up that student conference experience. It's okay. Anyway, I can go to church or the next week and all that. The important thing then to look at ourselves is, what do you value? Do you value the encounter with God that you will have? Is that worth $50? Do you value spending time with your community, with your life group, with your campus? Is that worth $50 to you? Do you value listening to the teaching of God's word and making the point to be there? Is that worth $50 to you? Or would you rather spend this $50 on your transport, on buying more food, on certain needs that to just make yourself happy because you're already living a very, very stressed out life, and sometimes you just want some money for yourself? Some of us in this place, maybe we're not tithing yet. And if you don't know what tithing is, I don't think I have a lot of time to explain what tithing is to you, but there's this tithing in 90 seconds video that we play from time to time that has a really, really good voiceover, and sometimes when I'm stressed or I can't sleep, I just listen to that very soothing voice and it just puts me to sleep. But if it's just to summarize what tithing is about, just very quickly, tithing is basically giving 10% of our income to the house of God, bringing 10% of our income to the house of God. And I know sometimes you might have issues with this statement because it's like, hey, tithing is not giving, it's presenting, and maybe income, but income is every source, and house of God, what does that mean, and all that. But just in summary, just that one line. And in essence, we believe that whether it is allowance from our parents or working a part-time job or any other form of providence, we believe that all providence comes from God. Okay? So whether it is you earned it through a part-time job or your parents gave it to you, we believe that through it all belongs from God and it goes through different hands, but eventually it comes to you. And as you receive this 100%, not just is 100% enough for you, but 90% is enough for you, and 10% belongs to the Lord. So we bring it back to God. All right? So I do feel that sometimes, right, some of us don't tithe, right? Not because we don't know what tithing is about, but because there's a mental block. That you really feel that I don't have enough. One day, when I have enough, I will tithe. But today, now, in my financial situation, I don't have enough. And you must know that that is a trap. Because if you ever reach that point where you think that you have enough, man, you'll never reach that point. The antidote to thinking that, oh, I don't have enough, so I can't tithe. One day when I have more, then I will tithe, right? The antidote to that actually, right, is to just start tithing now. Once you start tithing, right, you will really recognize that despite all that fear, despite all those mental blocks that you might have and thinking that it's not enough, that somehow, right, you will realize, believe me, by faith, that somehow, right, that this not just is the 100% enough, but 90% is enough. 10% belongs to the Lord. And we will never be able to afford to tithe, right, until we actually start tithing. We always feel that whatever we have is not enough. But one day when I have more, then I can tithe. But the truth is that day will never come until you put it into practice. Then you realize that when God put 100% in your hands, when God puts 100% in your hands, actually the 90% is more than enough for your needs. So non-tithers, people who don't tithe, they say, oh, I don't have enough to tithe. But people who are already tithing, right, and they're living in debt, right, they say, hey, I'm so blessed. I have more than enough. It is an attitude where we value spiritual treasures, where we value obedience to God, where we value bringing your tithe as a principle, as a Christian discipline to the house of the Lord more than we value what this 10% can buy us. The convenience, the enjoyment, whatever that we would have spent this 10% on. So number one, value spiritual treasures, eternal treasures over earthly treasures. Let me move quickly to point number two. Value generosity over stinginess. Verses 22 to 23. I'll tell you later when you look at the verse, you have no idea how the verse is talking about generosity and stinginess. So write this point down by faith, all right? Value generosity over stinginess, verse 22 to 23. And when you've got that down, I'm going to read these two verses out to you. Value generosity over stinginess. Are you ready? Here we go. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, the whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Where does it talk about generosity? Where does it talk about stinginess? It talks about eyes, healthy and unhealthy. It talks about light and darkness. Where on earth does it talk about generosity and stinginess? You must understand, right, that it's very hard to understand the English on first reading. So let me explain. Okay? Jesus was using this imagery of the eye, healthy and unhealthy, and light and darkness, right? Because this word healthy, okay, has another meaning which means generous. And this word unhealthy has another meaning which means stingy. So when you put these things together, Jesus was using an analogy that the people of that day would understand. But you and I today, right, we're like, healthy and unhealthy. That's like, oh, the guy who goes to the gym and the guy who doesn't, right? But what he was saying is that the eye, this word that he was using also means generous. And this other word, unhealthy, that he was using also means stingy. All right? And when he's using the example of light and darkness, right, basically, he's talking about the health of the person, a spiritual state, spiritual health of the person. So listen, he's saying that if your eyes are generous, and if your perspective, your focus, what you look and how you perceive and see things is generous, your whole body will be healthy, spiritually healthy. But when your eyes are stingy, when they're self-centered, when everything you see, you're trying to calculate and nitpick, and your eyes and your focus and your priorities are like that, then your entire being is in a very unhealthy state, a spiritually unhealthy state. So if your eyes are generous, you'll be a generous person. If your eyes are unhealthy or stingy, you will be a stingy person. And a couple of weeks ago, we did this show in our tertiary service called the Zelen DeGeneres Show. Were you there? Zelen DeGeneres, right? So in the Zelen DeGeneres Show, in the Ablaze service, which most of you were not there, right? One of the persons that we highlighted was this person called Min Lee. All right, this is her. This is her with her two siblings that are in this service. Kaho is in our NUS group, and Valerie is in our Kaplan group. All right, so I'm sure you can recognize them, right? They look quite similar to what they look in the photo, and Min Lee is the botak one. All right, so I don't know why, right? I asked for a family photo of her and her two siblings. Right? She gave me this one. That's the only one that they have. So Min Lee, right? Her family comes from a situation where they're not very well to do. They don't have a lot. And because they don't have a lot, she doesn't just study full-time, but she also works part-time. She works part-time, and also she serves very hard in ministry. She's very, very involved. She's one of the unit leaders in the North District. And so even though she studies full-time, works part-time, and serves very hard in church, she doesn't have a lot, but she's very stingy towards herself. She lives very simply, and she doesn't spend a lot of money on herself, but she's very generous towards other people. So she spends a lot on treating people, blessing people, paying for people, because the people that she's leading, a lot of them don't come from very well-to-do families. So because of that, then the creative team, the student conference team found out about it, and then we wanted to just do something to just bless her. So they bless her with a ticket to the Ablaze camp worth $100. If you missed it, right, here's what happened.
Both are going to walk away with a free ticket to Hope Student Conference this year. And that's your prize!
So, if the story ended here, right, it would be a really nice, feel-good story. But it didn't end here. So, she followed the two chickens to the back, right? And they were about to take down, the registration team was about to take down her details so that she can get a free ticket to the Blaze Camp, the student conference, worth $100. The main question on her mind was this: is this ticket transferable? And when she found out that the ticket is transferable, she was delighted and she was overjoyed and she was so happy. And immediately, right there and then backstage, she began thinking of who can she give this away to? Who can she bless? You see, the spirit of a generous person is like this. You don't need a lot to be generous. The generosity is not in how much you have to give away, but it's your state, it's your attitude, it's your heart. If your eyes are generous, your whole body is generous. That's what Jesus is saying. And if the story would end here, that would be a fantastic feel-good story, but it didn't end here. Last week when I was service leading in the adult service, I thought of sharing this story because I thought it was a really powerful story to encourage people towards generosity. I shared Min Lee's story, and I shared about how generous she is in blessing the students. And at the end of the service, we received a response card from one of the adults who wrote down, "I want to bless 5 needy students for student conference. Please tell me how I can do it." And so he wrote to the church and said, "I want to bless 5 students who may not be able to afford it, and I want to just bless them." And it struck me, friends, that generosity begets generosity. Generosity inspires generosity. That when we see and when we're in a culture That's what Jesus is talking about, a kingdom culture where people are not inherently calculative, stingy, and keeping for themselves. But people are inherently generous. It inspires people around us to be generous as well. So this person wrote into the church and we managed to get his details, and he said he wants to sponsor 5 students. So they're tying up together with him on how he can go about doing that. And it's important for us to realize it's not about how much you have. But the Bible tells us that a generous man, in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25, a generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. People who are stingy, people who are greedy, people who are self-centered, right? The truth is that even if they buy whatever they want and they accumulate and they win things and they have things and they get financial things, right, their happiness does not last. Because after that moment of pleasure, they'll be unhappy again, they'll be greedy, they'll be calculative, they just want more and more and more and more. And the truth is that sometimes people give, right, with the intention to get back. Sometimes people give, right, sometimes you give to donations. Rich people, they give a lot of money. Why? Because they want the recognition. Because they want the tax relief. Because they want to appear and to form a certain image. Sometimes they want the appreciation of people. People give sometimes wanting to get back. And that's not the attitude that Jesus is talking about here. Because it is possible to seem like you're giving away a lot of things. It seems like you're generous, but your attitude is that you want something back. And it is possible then, right? And I've seen this many times where people give to God and to the church hoping to get back. Maybe they give to God a certain amount of money and say, oh God, I want to begin tithing so that I pray that you bless my business or bless me with a good part-time job or bless me like win the lottery or bless me financially in some way. Help me get a promotion or what. So they tithe or they give an amount to church, right? Hoping that God will bless them back. Sometimes they give an amount, not hoping for financial returns, but hoping for non-monetary returns. Maybe they have a health issue. And then they come to God and then they say, oh, donate $10,000 to the church. Oh God, do you see my offering now? Please, help me with my health situation or help me in my family situation or help me with something. And it's like a transaction. At best, it is at worst a bribe where you think that you give a certain amount and you can earn and win the favor of God. And God doesn't want us to have that attitude. Because when we give expecting back, right, in the end, right, our attitude is still not generous. It's still stingy. It's still wanting something back. It's still selfish. It's still greedy, self-centered. That when we give, God wants us to have an attitude where we give, not expecting back, but we give and experience the joy of giving. And if we get back in some way or another, that's just a bonus. We don't need that. We don't give for that purpose. We give because we experience and we value the joy of giving. We value being generous. We don't tithe in the same way to get blessings from God. And we don't do that. Some of us, I've seen that happen, friends, where people tithe large amounts and then hoping that they'll get back financial blessings or some other blessings. We don't tithe so that you can get blessings from God, so that you can show God or show people, see, I am obedient to your commands, now I am worthy of your blessings. No. We tithe and we give because we are already blessed by God. Because of the 100% that we are blessed with, all of it, not just the 10%, the 100% is all from God. He is the provider and the giver of all things. And we thank God for the 100% and we joyfully bring back the 10% and say, God, this belongs to you. And I'm joyfully giving back what belongs to you in the first place. And of the 90, it's more than enough for me to live, for my transport, for my food, and also to bless others, to be generous towards others, to be simple in my living towards myself, but yet to be generous towards others. And that is the kingdom attitude towards money that God wants us to have. Generous people don't even need a thank you. They can bless and they don't even need a thank you because their intention and their objective is not for people to be indebted to them or need to give something back to them. A generous person seeks to give because it's part of who they are. It's like their character. And this reflects the character of God. God is a giver, not a taker. And when we give, when we are generous, we reflect who God is, our Father in heaven, who is the ultimate giver, generous in spirit, good and kind. All right, so that's point number 2. Value generosity over stinginess. Number 3, very quickly. Value God over money. Verse 24. In fact, if you want to be more accurate, you could write, value serving God over serving money. Point number 3, the final point for today. Value serving God over serving money. And we can see that from just one verse, verse 24. You can write that down. Value serving God over serving money from verse 24. Let's read verse 24 out together on the count of 3. Are you ready? 1, 2, go. You cannot serve both God and money. You cannot serve two masters. Imagine this. If you're an EPL professional football player, you cannot both play for Manchester United and play for Liverpool. You have to choose. You cannot play for two clubs at once. Because if not, there'll be a conflict of loyalties. There'll be a conflict of interest. In the same way, Jesus is saying you cannot serve two masters. You cannot love money and live your life thinking about money and then serving money and yet still claim to be able to serve God. You have to choose. Now listen, most of us in this room, we will not think that money is our master. We will not think that we are slaves or servants to money, right? Who in the right mind will think that, oh, money, then we it's as if money is our master, then we kowtow to money or we worship money. No one will actually think that. But the truth is, when it comes to things that make you happy, what do you look to? Do you look to not the money itself, but what the money can buy you? Or do you look to God? When it comes to a problem in your life that you're not able to solve, do you look to the money that you have to buy the solution? Or do you look to God? When it comes to your own identity and security and self-worth, do you look to the money that you have to be able to buy these things that you can wear and that you can drive and that you can hold to improve how you appear in front of others? Or do you look to God? And it's not about the whole outward action of, oh, we serve money, we have a temple where we go and we worship the money God. But it's that simple thought that if I don't have money, I really need God. But if I have money, it's okay because I can buy my solutions. It's okay. I can buy my way out of it. I can buy the things that make me happy. But if I don't have money, die. I need God. God, please come true for me. God, please come true. And God becomes reduced to something or someone that you go to only when you don't have money. And that's important for us to stand back, take a step back and realize that it's not about the worship of money as if we serve money, we worship money. That's outward and most of us will not admit that we're Christ followers. But the truth is, do we look to money to solve our problems? Or do we look to God? Do we look to money to buy our happiness? Or do we look to God? Do we feel safe and secure? We have a future when we have money in our bank account? Do we base our confidence on God to take care of our future? And that's important, friends. That if you only go to God when you don't have money, then God becomes a substitute for when you don't have money. And we don't want that. Because if you really place your trust in money being able to buy your happiness and buy your solutions and buy your future and buy your worth, that it can promise you a lot, but it will deliver very little. It can buy you momentary happiness, momentary solutions, but it can never secure you for the long term. It will definitely let you down. You know why? Because money doesn't care about you. Money doesn't love you. Money is just there as a tool, but money cannot eventually help you in the long term. If you place your trust in the money, you will be let down. So you got to make a choice. And I will encourage you early on in your life, when you're still a student, when you're still in the tertiary life station of your life, to to make a decision in your heart that I'm serving God, not money. I am going to serve God, not money. Because if not, you will soon realize that as you begin to place your trust and your hope in money to buy your happiness and buy your solutions and secure your future, the money will let you down. Because money is a good servant, but it's a terrible master. Money is good in your hand, but it's terrible in your heart. You need to hold the money in your hand, not let money have a hold of your heart. And that's important for us to know. Money is not a bad thing. We shouldn't reject money as if money is evil or money is wrong. But keep money where it belongs. Money is our servant. It is not our master. Our master is God. We only have one master. He is our priority. He is our king. And we have to decide for ourselves that God will always take priority in our lives. And God helped me learn this very early on in my Christian life. When I was about 1+ year as a Christian, I came in with all those issues and all that attitude, right? But God slowly transformed my attitude. He transformed my life. He transformed my character. And along the 1 year as a new believer, right, a lot of my bad habits, God helped me to clean up. He cleaned up my language. I stopped using vulgarities. He cleaned up my addiction to gambling. I was addicted to gambling. And I didn't have, and along the way, He helped me. He changed a lot of my life, even as 1 year as a new believer. And then, at that point of time, the church was raising money for a campaign to pay off the previous auditorium that it had taken a loan for. And so I really felt to myself that this church has helped me grow a lot into the kind of person that I am today. I mean, God, of course, but through this church, it has discipled me in such a short time, changed my whole life from the inside out. So I really want to be part of this because this is my home. So there was this campaign going on where they were asking the church to give financially, and I participated in it. And I was basically, 1 year ago, I was criticizing people for being brainwashed and anyhow giving money to the church. Right now, I'm the brainwashed one, right? I was like, okay, yeah, I really wanted to give to it. And I was all in because of what God was doing in my life. I was all in. So as I was praying for an amount, and I don't want to make this any more mystical or spiritual than it is. And I'm not saying that every time the church, there's a campaign or what, you need to be very mystical and pray for an amount. It's just what I was going through at that point of time, all right? As I was praying for an amount, God put an amount in my heart. And it doesn't always happen this way, but it happened for me there and then, 10+ years ago. And the amount that He put in my heart, right, was not an amount that I had. It was a 4-figure lump sum plus a monthly 3-figure amount. Now listen, for some of you, that's no problem, but for many of you who are still students, that I was a uni year 1 student, that's a lot of money. Plus, understand my background now, when I first came to church, I was addicted to gambling. And because of my addiction to gambling, I lost a lot of money. Not just did I not have any money in my bank account, but I owed bookies thousands of dollars that my friends had to help me pay off. So when I was in NS at that point of time, every time I received my salary from the SAF, a portion of my money goes to paying my friends back because they helped me pay the bookies first. So I was not just no money, but I was in debt. So I come from a situation where finally I was able to pay off this debt and finally got cleaned up the gambling aspect of my life, right? And finally, now I have some money in my bank account. Then there's this challenge that came. But because God put this in my heart, I was like, are you sure? Is this really true? I was like, I'm sure I'm hearing things. This cannot be true. I don't even have this amount of money. Where is this going to come from? By faith, I wrote it down and I said, okay, I'm going to pledge this amount. Now listen, this was my own decision. Nobody pressured me into doing this. There was no leader or no pastor or no person that asked me to give this amount. It was just what I felt that I wanted to give in this relationship with God. So as I did that, I had to change the way I live. I had to live very, very simply. Now, because I stay in hall, I chose every meal, right? It's a $1.30 cai fan. 30 cents for rice, 50 cents for vegetable, 50 cents for either an egg or tofu for protein. No money for meat. No drink. Every meal, $1.30 cai fan. No noodles, no Western, just that for every meal. So I live simply. Every lunch, every dinner. Every lunch, every dinner. Because of that. Every meal, $1.30 cai fan. And somewhere in that time, as I was studying, there was an opportunity that opened up for a part-time job that I managed to get. And he paid me, get this was some 10 plus years ago where the pay was even lower. 10 plus years ago, right, about 15 years ago, I got a job somehow that paid me $40 an hour. $40, right? 15 years ago, where the normal per hour rate, right, $7, $8, maybe nowadays $10. I got a part-time job, right? I don't know where this came from. They paid me $40 an hour. I got that part-time job, and as I live simply, and I received this blessing, right? So I worked there, and I begin to see how I was able to slowly, as I changed my lifestyle and as I committed to what God had put in my heart, able to pay off this amount monthly and able to accumulate that amount that, hey, perhaps it could be there. But I had to live very simply. So there was a point of time where somehow I think my mom forgot to transfer my allowance. And also there was some claims delay in my company, so that my company didn't transfer over this my salary on time. So I didn't get the salary, I didn't get the allowance from my mom. So at that point, right, the cash in my money, in my wallet, right, was wearing down. And I don't know where the next source is going to come from. So I started to eat whatever snacks that I have in my hall. All the snacks, the cheese rings, the whatever. Just eat whatever, because that's all I have. The Oreos, the instant Milo, whatever I could find in my cupboard. And it got to a point, right, where my bank account was less than $5. Okay? So it's not just I cannot withdraw money. I knew I couldn't withdraw money at that point of time because you need like minimum $20 to withdraw money for an ATM, right? But I had this idea. I'm going to try to use Nets, right? Because Nets minimum is $5. I could use Nets, right, to buy some bread or buy some instant noodles to keep me, to sustain me for the next few days until my allowance come in. Oh, I didn't even have $5. So when I tried to pay for bread using Nets, they rejected my payments. I was like, where's my food going to come from? So I could have borrowed, or I could ask somebody, hey, help me tide through the next few days. But I decided to go through this with God. So then I was down to 55 cents in my wallet, 55 cents. And it was a very cold day in the lecture hall. It's just very cold. I don't know why they blast the aircon that day. So it was very cold. So I decided to buy a hot Milo, 40 cents. So do the math, left 15 cents, okay? And then after that I was doing project with my friends, and then after we finished the project, one of my friends said, hey, can you lend me 20 cents? Because she wanted to take bus back to her hall. Now listen, at that point of time in NTU, you needed to pay 20 cents to take the shuttle bus, okay? So she said, can you lend me 20 cents? I need to go back to my hall. And I said, I don't have 20 cents for you. She thought I'm being stingy, you know. I can't even lend her 20 cents. So I said, see, my wallet, I took out my wallet, I took out the coins, I only have 15 cents, see? Then she said, oh, it's okay, I have 5 cents. And she took my 15 cents. Wow. Nice friends I have there. I didn't say she was my friend, I said she was my project mate, all right? Difference. So now I had zero. And then I had to survive on whatever I had in my cabinet that was going low, all my supplies, all the things, right, that, when the JCRC is raising funds and all that, right, all my roommate buy, they just eat. Then finally, when I finished my last packet of Oreos that morning for breakfast, last packet of Oreos, last packet of Milo, nothing left now. The entire cabinet is bare. And then that day, right, I was going to lecture, I was going to my tutorial, and I was wearing a pair of shorts or wearing a pair of pants, right, that I usually don't wear. Just don't know why I was wearing that pants. And usually, now, it's a bit too much detail here, but usually I put my wallet, my handphone, my everything, right, inside my front pocket. But this pair of pants didn't have a front pocket, so I stuffed everything in my back pocket, okay, in this pair of pants. And because I was late to lecture, right, on my, tutorial, I was late to class that day, right, when everybody was there, imagine I'm the tutor, and I'm teaching, everybody seated down, there were no seats left. The only seat that was left, right, was in that corner. Imagine where this camera is right now. So the only seat that was in the classroom, right, that was available, right, was that seat. It's so awkward seat, You can't see the screen, you see the teacher from an awkward angle. It's not a good seat because you can't really concentrate on what the teacher is teaching. And so, but I had no choice. I had to sit down in that corner. I can't see the slides, can't see anything. So I sat down in that corner, and then as I sat down, my handphone dropped out of my back pocket because it's too full. My handphone dropped out of my back pocket. I'm like, God, if I'm in this seat and my handphone spoiled and I have no money in my wallet, this has got to be the worst day ever, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, I have nothing left. And as I reached down and I picked up my handphone from that corner of the tutorial room, right, what I saw, right, was a crumpled piece of $10 note. Just there. And listen, I don't pick up money all the time, man. Just in case you know. I rarely ever pick up money in my life, but on that day, in that time of need, right, as I reached down, right, in that corner, there was a crumpled, dusty piece of $10 note that didn't belong to anyone. And I just knew that, oh God, like you know. And this $10 lasted me until the time where my allowance or my salary came in. God's providence in my life. But you see, you have to reach a point where you decide that at the end of the day, you don't base your confidence, right, in how much you have in your bank account or how much you have in your wallet. You have to say that, okay, if I have a lot or if I don't have a lot, my trust is in God. And the Apostle Paul was saying, right, in Philippians chapter 4, and this is not on the slides, but in Philippians chapter 4, right, he was saying that, yeah, I know what it has. I know what it feels. I know what it's like to have a lot. And I know what it's like to have nothing. I know what it means to be in lack. Whether I have a lot or I have very little, I have learned what it means to be contented. And then he goes to say the verse that many people claim, I can do all this through Christ who gives me strength. And I want to impress upon you as your pastor the joy of contentment. Not because we have a lot that we are happy, but that whether we have, not that we reject wealth, but whether we have a lot or we have little, we can be contented, we can be grateful, we can trust God, that God is the one, not money, but God is the one that holds our future. Who is this God? He's the giver of all things. God owns everything. He's the provider of all things. And it says in Romans chapter 8, and with this verse I'm going to close, that He, God, who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him, Jesus, up for us all. How would God not also, along with Jesus, graciously give us all things? Our trust in our providence is in God because God is a giver, not a taker. We value the eternal things. We value being generous. We value serving God and not money. And in this, we live with a different set of rules from the world. We live with kingdom rules, kingdom perspectives, kingdom ideologies. That is the transformation that God desires for us. Not just the outward, not just whether you give or don't give, not just whether you tithe or don't tithe, not just whether you donate money to the church or to poor people or not, but from the inside out, our values, our attitudes are transformed. With that, please put away your things. Please rise to your feet. Let's prepare to respond to God right now.